Greetings, everybody. My soundtrack for this video is War by Bob Marley. I think it's quite fitting, especially now. It's so amazing how, this song was written decades and it's so relevant today. Now, for the early people, when I started 2015, I shared a story about domestic violence that I experienced. And the first time I did it, that was the first time I talked about it with anyone. I just didn't discuss it, let alone to do so publicly. And as I shared my story, I became very emotional. And I've talked about this topic from time to time over the years. But it's not a topic we can just say, okay, we're addressing it here and it's over and done. Because what I want to say is women are oppressed. I don't care how much breakthroughs we have in our life, we still undergo all kinds of oppression. There's not a day that goes by in any country in the world where a woman is not killed by her boyfriend, her lover, her husband. So the trend that we see in Jamaica is not a new trend as it relates to women. There is not a single day in Jamaica where men are not beating women. There are not a single day in Canada where women are not experiencing domestic violence. And when we're talking about domestic violence, we're across the board, whether it be young or older women. It doesn't matter what race she is, it doesn't matter what class she is. I have worked at a crisis center, and there are doctors, lawyers, professionals who are experiencing domestic violence on a regular. So when we see these things and we hear, oh, these men in Jamaica are demons or let's cut that out. Let's cut it out. The only difference is, back in the day, if a female called a police officer to say that she was being abused, by her partner, it would be something that would be considered a domestic situation and she would have to go back home to more of it. A little is being done, but after decades, after hundreds of years of men just doing, and that doesn't mean that men are not abused, because men are abused too, but we're talking about violence towards women. And in general, this video, I'm discussing violence towards each other as human being. All of us are experiencing violence on one level or the other: domestic, physical, psychological, mental, financial. Can we set aside financial abuse for a whole other video? Because we're all experiencing, we're dealing with banks, we're dealing with, let's just keep that for another day. And for a woman that might be listening to this video, that is thinking, nobody knows that I'm going through this, I'm very embarrassed, I'm ashamed, because you see, they have taught that violent men have somehow socialized you into thinking that what they're doing to you, the aggression towards you, is your fault, and that you should feel ashamed that you're the one getting beaten or beat up when the one who's doing it should be ashamed. See, so somehow society have not sent a message to these abusers. It is very clear that a lot of people who are bullies, they're the ones who go into private relationships in their marriage or whichever form of relationship they find themselves in, where they cohabitate or even just date, these bullies are often very weak, weak-minded, weak physically, because a lot of men who beat upon women, they're cowards. If they're confronted by other men, they would know how to defend themselves. They are cowards. The whole climate or attitude of warfare depends on cowards. Don't let anybody fool you. A lot of individuals who attack other people for their morals or their values or their ideology or their religion or whatever. When you're attacking someone because of what they believe in, that makes you a coward. When you're attacking someone because you perceive this individual to be weaker than you are a coward. And so there's a lesson to be learned, and eventually it will be learned, because these folks who constantly, whether it be mental health issues or just wanting to control other people, these individuals are yet to learn a lesson. The tide usually changes. And so, though it seems like women are vulnerable at the moment to all this abuse from men and from themselves too, the tide will change. When you look at global affairs and you look at individuals who, power and might and strength and use violence to control other people, to take what does not belong to them from other people, these individuals have a thing coming. There was a scenario, what is it, 2 years ago, I think, with these two men going at each other. One, flexing his powerful muscles and his strength and might of his military people, and the other was doing the same. But the question would be, why is it this individual backed off when he realized that he couldn't control or bully the other person? Why? Why does one person who then go on to, release deep violence upon another, why did he not do it with the one who stood up to him? And I think that's what women have to start doing, to start standing up. Now, I'm not saying they should go out there and not examine the situation that you're in, because you have to use wisdom. A person who has nothing to live for only wants you to try to push back. So you have to know when to run, and you have to know when to surrender. So as a woman who have experienced, hurt at the hand of someone that I gave myself to, I had to know when it was time to surrender and when it was time to leave. And so this incident with myself, where I was held hostage for 24 hours in my household and experienced violence on levels that I don't wish to discuss right now. I know. And I know it wasn't something that I did. I'm not responsible for that person's behavior. But when you're socialized a certain way, somehow the abuser still gains some kind of pity from the one who they abuse. And so a lot of women stay because the men plead and say, I'm sorry, and the cycle of abuse and violence continue over a period of time. And unfortunately, for the women who don't know how to leave, how to plan everything we do in life, you have to plan everything in life. You have to plan it. And those who are planning to leave oftentimes make some big mistakes into sharing that thought. When you look at yourself and you realize the situation that you're in and recognize the danger for what it is, sometimes you have to make your exit without notice. You have to get out of that situation. The experience, or sorry, the expression, learn how to take your hand out of the lion's mouth. And so sometimes women get fed up and they start telling the man, I don't want you, or start telling the man, I'm going to leave you. I mean, we all do it at some point or the other. But do you understand the person that you're with? Do you know what they're capable of doing? Are we threatening that you're going to leave? Is that the right thing to do? Now, depending on the circumstance, you can say, we are not getting along, this is not working out. And, you both come to an amicable agreement. Sometimes there's resistance from one person to ending the relationship, but the person, over time will come to accept it. And then there is the one who, you've seen that. You've seen just having similar or sorry, simple conversation with a person, hand folds into a fist. When the person punches the wall and you're saying to yourself, well, at least he hits the wall, he's not hitting me. But your house is filled with holes from what the person puts through, his fist or his feet, or might not be hitting you. But the aggression is there. It's very clear. And the threats, or someone threatening to even harm themselves, that's a sign that someone isn't there mentally. There are a lot of bullies in the world. The sooner we realize that, the better it is for us. There are a lot of broken people in the world. The sooner you learn this, the better it is for you. And the expression hurt people, it goes without saying. If you're being abused, if you're a woman and you experience abuse, especially physical abuse, any kind of abuse really, but physical and mental abuse, you have to decide if you're going to stay and die. And you don't have to die physically, you die psychologically. Or you can decide that you're going to leave and have a fighting chance to survive. Everywhere there's war, and rumors of war. And as long as human beings live on the face of this earth, there will be aggression towards some. Those who continually use aggressive forces against other people who they think are weaker than themselves usually have a thing coming. In global affairs, I'm saying also that you find the people who are the first to jump to warfare. They're the ones who are not standing on these battlefields. They're sending other people, other innocent people who have family. Their families are secured. If there is a threat, they're the first to fly out to safety. People are not thinking. Cowards, for the most part, using all kinds of excuse to usurp other person's human rights and dignity. If you're a woman who is being abused, leaving is one thing, but sometimes your whole life has to change. You have to root up from your community, go away from family, just disappear, and just cut that part of your life. Some women have to change their whole reality, assume new identity. because of violence. And the children in these relationships, they do suffer a lot. I'm healed, so I can talk about it now without tears. But I had years when I lived in fear, hiding, experienced close contact with this individual, fearing for my life. So I understand very well what some women are going through. And depending on how you're socialized, depending on your religious background, you could just present yourself like a living sacrifice to somebody who's very disturbed, someone who doesn't deserve you. It's not easy. It's a tough thing to talk about. And people who don't experience it don't know how to even begin to understand what this is like. Peace and love and joy to every woman and man who experience violence at the hand of another and is so confused, want to leave but stay out of fear. It's a terrible situation. It really is. War is everywhere. Give thanks. If you're in a good relationship, one where people must have misunderstanding, must argue, must get to the point where they say, listen, I'm not happy, this relationship is not working out for me, but you still have the choice to change your mind because someone is not forcing you to change your mind, but because you realize sometimes we overreact when things happen in a relationship, and sometimes we're fed up with always arguing and fighting over nonsense. But every person should have the right to choose who they want to stay with and who they feel they're no longer compatible with. Plan your escape. Plan your escape. Plan your escape. And you don't have to tell your left hand what your right hand know. It's a tough one to talk about, honestly. Real hard. But I say bless up to everyone watching this video. Thank you so much for watching and always coming back to support. And to whomever, particularly women, who are going through this serious turmoil in your life. I say peace to you and blessings. And as the new year continue to grow, may you find peace and the strength to leave what no longer profits you. Peace and the strength to say no more. Stay blessed, everybody.